Thank you. So as Julie mentioned, I'm Shay. I'm a designer, front-end developer, and a product person at a startup called Belly in Chicago. Is anyone, I can't see you, but is anyone from Chicago? We should chat. We should hang out. But today I'm talking about front-end architectures, writing modular CSS, and sharing styles across multiple code bases. So at Belly, we build quite a few websites, a ton really. It's kind of an understatement as to how many styles we actually, or excuse me, how many websites we actually build. And each of the websites serves a slightly different purpose, so we've put them on different code bases. But they all share very similar styles and very similar CSS. And this begins to be a little troublesome as we start to duplicate our code. I think the clicker is dying on me. Oh, now it's going too far. All right, sorry. So we have a member-facing website as well as a merchant-facing website. And as I was saying, these are each on separate code bases. And that allows us, for faster development, we have less back-end dependencies as we work our way around this. However, we are duplicating our styles as we start to do this, which is not good. We have an entire slew of merchant tools. So we have a knowledge center, a different analytics tool for them. And again, very similar styles across all these websites, yet entirely separate code bases. Right? And this doesn't stop. We have multiple blogs, internal tools, you name it. And for the longest time, our styles were a complete mess, and they were continually getting worse. And we knew that we were better than this. We knew that we could be smarter in how we were actually building out these websites. Now, everything is built on top of a service-oriented architecture. That is, that they are driven by different sets of APIs. So if you're not familiar with SOA or the service-oriented architecture, it's a design pattern where software provides a distinct functionality as services to other applications. That's a mouthful, so let me kind of like break this down and what this looks like. We start with the databases, and the databases store all of our content. And on the opposite side of them are the actual clients. These are those front-end applications, those user interfaces. And sitting between the two are our services. Now, each service focuses on one core distinct functionality. And those services will then go out and speak to multiple databases. Come on. All right, I'm giving up on the clicker. Those services go out and speak to multiple databases or a given database and start to populate the content. They can read and write into these databases. Then they take all of that content and drop it into the actual applications for us. Now, this is incredibly modular and it scales well. The great thing here is that as any given service reads or writes into these databases, that content is then updated across all of the applications. We don't have to worry about one application serving up different information than another. Right? And that's exactly what we wanted to do with design. And we couldn't figure out where design exactly fit into this picture. Now, our aim and the idea was that we'd have modular, predictable, and maintainable code. Right? We were past the idea of building websites in terms of pages. We were into the new frontier of actually building out a system and defining all of our styles to be shared across a handful of applications, right? And sharing those common styles. Specifically, we were talking about CSS. We use Sass. So we wanted to be able to share the actual source files tied to it, right? We wanted to share our variables, our mixins, maps, you name it. As far as JavaScript goes, we use a handful of different preprocessors, but most predominantly we're using CoffeeScript. We wanted to make sure that all of our modules and components from CoffeeScript were also getting pulled in. And this continues down the line when we talk about images, fonts, and any kind of common assets. We wanted to be shared up and served across all of our applications. We wanted a service predominantly to focus on design. So we wrote our own style as a service. We dubbed it Rolodex. Rolodex is a toolkit. It's not a framework. It doesn't solve for every given problem we have at Belly. That's okay. It grows. It changes over time. It's a living organism. And you guys can go take a look at it and use it if you wish. But honestly, I wouldn't recommend doing that. I'd recommend taking a look at it, forking it, and using it to run in your own different direction. Right? Our styles are unique to Belly. I think your styles will be unique to yourselves as well. So just kind of inspect what we did and run with it. And with that, I give you a disclaimer, right? I'm speaking from my experience today. Yours may vary, and that's totally all right. Do what works best for you. So our toolkit came together kind of like differently than what most people would say to go do. We wrote our toolkit in parallel with that of a real application in a real project. It might be somewhat taboo, but we didn't start with a style guide. I've built style guides and then tried to drop them into an application, and I found that style guides are rarely intended or used as intended, and I'd struggled with that. So we built out our toolkit and then our style guide based off of a real project. And it looked a bit like this. Say we have these two applications. We have a home page and a style guide. Our toolkit sits in between these two and serves up styles to each of them. But how this all came together was that all of our styles and stuff were written inside that home page. And as we were starting to shore up those common components and figure out where they were being reused, we took them and then dropped them into that toolkit. Once they were in the toolkit, we then ported them over into the style guide. Now, the style guide itself is a client of that toolkit, which is an important thing to note. Those shared styles live inside that toolkit, right? And our toolkit right now is packaged up a handful of different ways. You can pull it in as a Ruby gem or a Bower package, or a handful of other ways, all depending on what your actual environment is and how you're trying to grab those styles. And here you can see those applications can then pull in those source files, right? They have access to the CSS, the JavaScript, and those shared assets, specifically down to those actual source files. So we can share our SAS variables, mixins, and utilities, right? And any change we make inside that toolkit is then updated and reflected across all of our applications. So if we decide to change our color of blue, well, we can see that blue take effect in any of the given applications. If we redesign our buttons, we can see our buttons redesigned across all of the applications. Now, it took quite a bit of time to actually put this toolkit together. It is still being put together day in and day out. We add new components to it, remove some, we refactor others, day in and day out. And I want to share some ideas that we have and we continue to practice around the implementation of how we build out our toolkit. Now, first and foremost, the thing we were trying to do is get our code down. We just wanted less of it. And we were out to break our CSS up into very small modules. The idea was if we could get our styles into small modules, that they would be more maintainable. And as such, we followed the single responsibility principles. That is, our styles should be independently created and encapsulated. Every module of style should focus on one thing only, and one thing really well, right? Following the same logic of which the services are actually built as well. And if we do this right, this would allow for more combinations of modules to create an array of styles for us and open up a door to quite a few things. So here's an example of some alerts, or an alert, excuse me. And here we have all these styles rolled together. Now, this doesn't allow us to reuse essentially any of this code. We can't create different types of alert based out of this. Right? This is a component that is not independently created or encapsulated, which is not good. What we want to do, though, is break those styles apart. Right? Take any of those shared styles and abstract them. Here we create an alert module, of which shares the common styles for every alert message we'll have. Right? That being the border radius and padding. Then we create a separate module, the alert air in this case, which ensures the theming of what we're doing, right? That being the background color and the text color for us. And we can create a slew of different modules to apply to the alert module and create a handful of different styles, right? And each of these modules follows that single responsibility principle, right? They are completely encapsulated. And these smaller modules of style allow us to reuse them in quite a few places. And because we have these small modules, we can combine them with others for different results. Along the same lines, though, we don't want to let our HTML dictate the structure of our CSS. We put very thought and intent into how we write our selectors. Right? The idea is that we want to write them for reusability. We want them to be efficient. We want to reduce waste and repetition of the styles that they entail. The idea is that we would build these components to be used where and whenever we pleased, right? That they were flexible in that nature. As such, we had to make sure that they didn't have any parent container dependencies, right? That would allow us to change any of the elements as intended with semantics. And we didn't want to have a handful of CSS overrides baked into our styles as well. So here you can see we have this featured box. And when the featured box is left alone, it has a gray background. When it's dropped inside of an article, it has a white background. And this location-based selector that it lives in is not a good idea, right? This is troublesome for us. For one, we're overriding some of the default styles, but we're also, more importantly, tightly coupling those styles to the parent. And what happens when article needs to change? What happens when article needs to become a section or a div or what have you? You're stuck. That change would then need to be made in the HTML and the CSS, right? Not always a luxury we'll have some days, right? We can't change that parent element with the semantics of what we're building. And this limits the number of elements we can actually apply these styles to. Not ideal. Instead, we can create a new class, that of which is branched from the original. Here we're not overriding any of the default properties, right? We've completely removed the dependency of a parent container, and this allows us to adapt to semantics, right? We can use these styles anywhere we intend, right? It's more performance driven. We're thinking much more systematically around how this is working, and we're writing these styles and building them with the intention of them being able to be ported and used anywhere we wish. But naming is hard, right? This is arguably the hardest part about what we do. It's always been hard. I believe it always will be. And you may follow the block element modifier or the SMAX or OCSS approach for naming. Honestly, we use a mix. But more important than that is that you name for understanding, right? We are the ones who read these class names. We should be the ones who understand them first and foremost. Now, ideally, these names are functional. They speak to the function or the content and meaning of the element they're applied to. But we should be able to understand them first and foremost. And we should also strive to follow a sense of predictable patterns as we do this. Now, here I have a handful of classes. Any guess as to what the class PR is? Anybody want to take a guess? Pull request, that's good. Press release? Public relations? All right, so then what is UN? Uncensored? It's an uncensored press release is what we have going on here, right? This is a problem, though, because no one really knows what that means. And cognitively, you're going to see that and be like, okay, I'm just going to go pull up the markup and see what that actually applies to. And that's troublesome if that happens multiple times a day, right? Sure, we save some time by not punching out extra characters in that name, but we've caused a ton of increased time and frustration and actually not knowing what that name is down the road. Now, these classes are getting to be a bit too deeply nested too, right? We're increasing the specificity around this, and we've limited the portability. UN, whatever that may be, cannot be moved outside of PR at this time, right? And that different levels of strength there will cause trouble, right? This is not good. Specificity will only go up. It was priced in unit, so no idea you would have known that, right? And you would have had to look that up, and that would have been trouble. Here we have better names. They're not all that much longer, and they work out really well. They're also set to the same strength. Unit doesn't need to live in price. It can be placed anywhere and still get the styles as intended. Right? We haven't increased any of the specificity. This is much more modular and much more performant around what we're doing. But we should aim for predictability too. Right? Here are the class names for our buttons. Now, these are nothing new, right? These are very standard functional class names. I deserve no award for deciding these, right? But if you looked at our alert styles and the names for those, they're right along the same lines, right? They are very similar to the buttons. They are very predictable, but they're also functional. Our labels, again, no surprises here either, right? These are very obvious and simple examples. It does get much harder than this, but look for those patterns, right? And try and follow them where necessary. Perhaps you have a pattern for how you define what your font sizes are, or different Z indexes or things like that. And follow those same patterns where and out. The best feeling is if I can write styles and almost guess what the class names are without doing any extra work to actually pull those up. Now, I've seen Sass mentioned a few times today, and I want to chat in on this just for a little bit, and specifically with maps. Maps allow us to get more done with less code, and that to me is incredibly powerful and something I'm always going to try and do. This is especially true when it comes to creating different utilities or components. And one edit inside of a Sass map can then create an entirely new utility or component for us. So for example, we always define our variables outside that of a map so that we can use those variables elsewhere as intended. And then most commonly, we drop them into a map too. And here you can see we have an each loop that iterates through that map and will generate text-based utility classes around it. So compiled out, we get something that looks a bit like this. And should we ever want to add another text-based utility class, all we have to do is add another line to that map. It's pretty simple. We don't have to do the extra work of actually writing some of this stuff out longhand. Now, maps are also more powerful than that, though. We can generate entire components around how this stuff works. Here you see a map that has nested list within it, okay? And the each loop goes through each of those nested lists and will create variables based out of those, right? And compiled out, this will generate a handful of different alert styles for us. And the maps here set this up perfectly. So we can just add one more line or change a line in that map and get an entirely different component out of it. This allows us to scale incredibly well, but it also allows us to stay consistent. Now, if you're using SAS and you're not using maps, I highly recommend taking a look at these. So I think these will get you quite a bit further than you expect. Then we have Mixins too, right? And Mixins are the perfect way to share a common group of styles. I say group of styles very purposefully there, right? Only use a Mixin if you're actually sharing multiple declarations. If you are sharing a single declaration, that isn't that helpful, right? I would recommend just writing out that property and value pair as intended. If the value is somewhat unique, I would look at creating a variable for that instead of a mixin, right? Mixins should follow that single responsibility principle too, right? A mixin should be independently created and encapsulated. Their output should do one thing and one thing only, and one thing really well. Now, the image replacement technique is the ideal mixin, right? This is a common group of styles that we often find ourselves repeating. Here you can see it used in terms of a logo, right? And compiled out, we take those styles from that mixin, and we find them alongside their other styles that we're using inside that selector. This is the perfect opportunity for that. Now, mixins also allow us to pass in arguments to them, so they can create dynamic sets of styles for us. So here you see a box outline module, of which you can pass in an argument for a border color. So in this scenario, given a hexadecimal value when calling that mixin, compiled, we see the proper border color alongside all those other styles pulled into this. Now, this is a great way to share common groups of styles, yet be dynamic and inherit certain types of styles too. This makes composition easier for us, right? And again, keeps our styles consistent around what we're doing. So, when doing this though, you have to measure and profile your code. Set a baseline of key progress indicators, KPIs. It's a corporate term, I apologize, but it is important to do. For us, we use style stats and web page tests to give us very high-level optimizations and overviews, right? This is very quantitative feedback as to how we are writing our styles. We use CSS, CSS, and CSS lint for more specific optimizations then, more detailed and recommendations on what we can improve. This stuff was more qualitative for us. I can't recommend doing this enough. I kind of didn't do this enough early on and find it biting me in the end, right? You will uncover so many optimizations by doing this stuff with some level of regularity. And here's some numbers for a project. This is a legit application that we were working on. Version 1 is what we were using inside of Bootstrap and everything it took us to kind of overwrite Bootstrap to get our styles and our themes plopped into this. Version 2, though, is that of which we use Rolodex. And you can see huge improvements across the board here. First and foremost, our key progress indicator was to get our file size down. We knew that with less code, we had more control over it, it would be much more maintainable. And we were able to cut our file size nearly in half by just following some of the most basic principles inside of this, right? Along with that, we were also able to decrease the number of rules, selectors, and unique values we were using. This means our code is becoming much more inside of our control, right? We know what it's actually doing, and this is good. Furthermore, a lot of our property counts are all dipping down and going down in the right direction. Now, these are not like our KPIs by any stance, something we want to keep an eye on, but these will fluctuate. As we grow, as we iterate, these property counts will go up and down, and that's perfectly fine. And we are not perfect by any means, but looking at these numbers gave us the indication that we're actually working in the right direction, and we can see the performance going up. But code is complicated, right? One of the things I did continually and still continually do is I'll write things out longhand. Like I would just open up CodePen and just start punching away and writing styles out in a very long format, right? Almost as it would be compiled. And then I start to refactor that back. You have to have patience and refactor and rename and grow willingly around what you're writing. Leave comments and documentation as you're going too. If you're writing anything that you think you could come back in a month and not quite understand, write down what you're doing, right? Explain what isn't obvious. Talk about how, what, and why that code exists. It's going to slow you down. That's inevitable. But slowing down, I think, is actually a pretty good thing. It's going to make you think twice about the code you wrote. And as you start to explain it and write out that explanation, you might find some optimizations in there that you'd previously missed. But in all, do the best you can, right? You have to find your way to benefit for modular, predictable, and maintainable code, right? Make sure you're focusing on shipping and on understanding and controlling your code. If you can get that under control, right, and you have a good overarching view of your code, you'll enjoy quite a few things, right? You'll have much more consistent designs. You'll have a much more ease of development. But this is tough, and that's okay. Nothing's going to be perfect. You're not going to nail it the first time around. Just start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. And much like this guy, just cut loose, right? Enjoy your work. Because really, at the end of the day, that's all that matters. That's what we're doing. That is what I have. Thank you.